Green Spring. Today is Thursday, November 5th, 2015. I'm Fran DeVoe, your host for today, hosting one of our residents and one of our staff. Don Young is here with us. Hello, Don.
Hello, Fran. How are you?
I'm well, and very well, in fact, about this topic. And we have with us Kathleen Taylor, lead social worker, right? Is that your title?
Well, social work manager.
Social work manager. I get a lot of those titles mixed up. But anyway, welcome, Kathleen.
Thanks.
And so we're here today to talk about end-of-life issues. I'm not sure they're going to be real serious, that there isn't going to be a little bit of twist to it, maybe a little humor or lightness, or is it all dark and serious?
Well, end-of-life issues are what you make of them. There's
Exactly.
some that you can control and some that you can't control. Some are serious, some you can make light of, but they have to be dealt with. And dealing with them is the purpose of my presentation on the 19th of November, and the purpose of a book that I have written called If I Should Die Before I Wake.
Mm-hmm.
We deal with issues all throughout our life, beginning with, are we going to wear the Mary Janes or the Oxfords for our first day of first grade? And when we're in our 70s, 80s, 90s, we have to begin to look at the issues that are going to be around. Have we provided the necessary resources for those that we leave behind? And if we haven't, what are we going to do about it? Certainly, if your spouse does not have enough to live on, you should take that into consideration and do something about it. Now, living here at Green Spring, we had to prove we could do that before we moved in. Mm-hmm. And there is the Benevolent Fund and other mechanisms. We have to dispose of several things. First of all, we have to dispose of ourselves. That's called a funeral or a memorial service. You can be cremated, you can be buried, you can do all kinds of things at your funeral, but you need to make those decisions. How is your funeral to be handled? Who's going to handle it? That's called disposal of self. Then you have to dispose of what you've accumulated throughout your many years of existence. And we've already downsized before we moved to Green Springs. Some of us downsized several times before we moved to Green Springs. But the final disposition of property is a very interesting thing. I've been told by many people, oh, my children wouldn't fight over what we're leaving behind. Well, those are the same people that tell you that their 3-year-old would never lie to them. Mm-hmm. And then 10 years later, they say, oh, I know when he's lying, when his mouth is moving.
That's a little cynical.
People will go to war over certain possessions. And if you're wise about what you take into consideration with respect to the disposition of your resources, you can prevent a lot of those family disputes, some of which can tear families apart for lifetimes. And understand that these are your things. It's what you've accumulated, and you get to make the decision as to how you want to dispose of these things. Then finally, there's the disposal of information. I have a friend whose husband died 5 years ago. She hasn't sold the second car because she's never found the keys to the second car. Mm-hmm. We have a place in the country. I asked my son last weekend, if you had an emergency and had to turn the water to the house off, how would you go about that? He has no idea how to turn the water to the house off or how to turn the main electrical service off to the house. It behooves us to let our progeny know how to do these things. If it's something that only you know about, share that information. I had a friend call me a couple of years ago. She was the second wife of an old Navy buddy, and she said, I just got a call from Mr. X's first wife, and she said that in the divorce settlement, he left her an insurance policy. She doesn't know what policy it was, what company it was with, how much money there was, but it's out there somewhere. What do I do? I took a wild guess because he was in the Navy, and I guessed it was a Navy mutual aid policy. They contacted Navy Mutual Aid. The woman got almost $75,000, which he had not left the information about, but through a stroke of luck, she got 75 grand. Had he left information about his insurance assets, there would have been no question. But she quite likely could have lost the entire $75,000 by not knowing where to go to look for it. And finally, there's the disposition of your persona. Sure, we spend 7, 8, 9 decades accumulating things, but we also spend 7, 8, 9 decades accumulating who we are, what we're about, what our values are. And do we want to impart those values? And how are we going to impart those values? I point out that the most influential life that was ever lived, the personal property was disposed of in 5 or 6 minutes by some Roman soldiers. But we're still talking about the ideas and philosophy that this man had 2,000 years later. None of us is going to be the second coming of this particular person, but we all have things that we believe in, things that we need to say, thank yous that need to be said, apologies that need to be made. And these are what I classify as end-of-life issues. But there are other end-of-life issues, and they're the hard ones. They're the feelings of loneliness and pain and illness and poverty, and how do we deal with these things? Well, next week, the ministries program here at Green Spring will be putting on a program, I think it's on the 12th, dealing with these particular issues. Many people say that the book has never been written on about how to deal with these issues, loneliness and poverty and fear and desperation. There are others that take the position the book has been written, and there are 4 of them. They're called Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. It is important that we understand the resources that we have here at Green Spring, in Fairfax County, and in other places that will assist us in dealing with these issues as we have to confront them. And very few of us get to go out. We're not hit by a bus or have a heart attack that's terminal and just drop dead. Most of us are going to have somewhat of a long battle with whatever it is that's going to take us. And we need to get through that. We need to get through it comfortably. Then there's the issue of how do we deal with these issues? When we talk to our children, Dad, I don't want to talk about that. What do you mean you want to talk about insurance? You got enough, don't you? Well, maybe you do and maybe you don't, but you need to sit down. You need to have family meetings. If you need professional assistance by way of an attorney or an estate planner, go get that professional assistance. Only you can make those decisions. The purpose of my presentations, the purpose of my book is, number one, to get people to understand that this is an issue that has to be dealt with, and that dealing with it is a way of showing how much you love those that you're going to leave behind. And it's important that you show that love and affection, because the average attorney in this country, billable rate is $275 an hour. I sell this little book for 20 bucks. If it can save your family 1 hour of attorney time, it's paid for itself 10 times over. And it's important for the family to address these issues together. And if you're going to have a family meeting, make it an adult meeting, make it alcohol-free, and make it without children around. But be prepared for the meeting. Go get the information. You don't have to disclose the exact amount that's in your stock account with Hoover Investments or whatever, or how much is exactly in your savings account, but your children should know where the savings account is. Some people may want to leave a general power of attorney. Some people may want to put children on bank accounts. Those are all personal decisions. I do remind people that a general power of attorney excuse me, does not survive you. It can only do what you can do while you were alive. So you don't rely on a general power of attorney instead of a will. So there are lots and lots of problems. There's lots and lots of information. And what we try to do in the presentations and in the book is to give people a few guideposts, a few hints as to how to deal with things, how to get by this time, and how to feel comfortable about it.
While you were speaking, Don, the television screen was showing that event that you're having, is it next week? In the
19th of November.
The 19th, in the Village Square classroom, I believe. Or
It's either the classroom or the craft room. Yeah.
The craft room. And so do people have to call and make a reservation?
Not at all, just show up.
Okay.
We're happy
So
to
what
have
happens if you overflow?
We'll either move the event or have another event.
Okay, because, you know, each room has their limits, because it sounds like an extremely important session, and you might get lots of takers for
Well,
that.
I hope so.
Yeah, I hope so too. Kathleen, being involved in the social work here, you obviously have experienced some residents, speaking strictly now for our residents, you've experienced some of these issues with them, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely, on a regular basis. Yeah, I just really like the things that Don's saying, because they're all really, really important for our residents to hear. And I think social workers say it a lot, so it's kind of, I think sometimes people don't listen to us anymore, so it's nice to have somebody else coming at it from a different angle. And I really like what he's done in terms with the whole area of advanced care planning. A lot of times for the social work team, we're focusing on the healthcare decision making, advanced directives and healthcare surrogacy and all of that. So I love that he has sort of blended together all the different aspects of advanced care planning into a really nice package.
Well, the comment, Don, that you made of the son saying, don't tell me about that. I don't want to know. In my own personal situation, my daughter's the one that does it. My son, okay, where's this book, Mom? Where are all these numbers? You know, because I have insurance policy number, who to contact, what's the phone number? You know, all of those things which I know, having experienced it taking care of someone else who died, in fact, to someone else's. I know that those things are so important to find, and to hunt for them after, and to discover, in one case I discovered, what is this key to this safety deposit box? What safety deposit box? You know, that sort of thing. And it's really important to have all of that documented.
It's important to have it documented. It's important that you get and consider information. I put in the article in the Villager that if if you go to certain funeral homes and simply rent a casket for one night for a viewing, it can cost over $1,500 just to rent a casket for one night.
That's right.
The further away you get from Northern Virginia to deal with funeral services, the better off you are. Funerals can be expensive, and they don't need to be. What you need to do is do some advanced planning. Go to a funeral home. They all have very slick books and presentations for you to take with you, and they'll work with you in planning a funeral. But if you leave it up to your spouse or children to do at the very last minute, the thing that strikes fear in my heart is the child that says, "Mom, you're not going to buy that casket. This is Dad." Well, maybe Mom would prefer to have the money in the bank account. And that's a decision
Of
for
course.
Mom to make. And it's best if Dad helps her with that decision by saying, "I don't want you to spend any more than X." Believe it or not, in the Washington Post, a nice color photograph with a 6-inch long 2-column obituary can cost you $1,500. Do you want to do that?
Well, I think that, you know, one of the points you're making that I think is really important is it's really about the conversations that you're able to have with your family, because all of that kind of gets aired out in the process of just sitting down and talking about it. The documentation is important, but the conversations that people can reflect back to after the person's gone and go, "Yeah, Mom said this," or "Dad said this," is really going to be also very helpful in trying to sort things through after the person's dead. So
You're absolutely right. It's wonderful to have the kind of exchange of information that you're referring to. And people don't necessarily want to have that exchange of information, but it's absolutely necessary, and nobody knows that better than you as a social worker.
Now, Don, you just gave us, I guess, a synopsis of your book. What else is in the book? Can you show us something that's in there?
Well, it's a workbook.
Okay.
There are blanks to fill in with insurance policies, the names of the company, the numbers of the policy, what the policy's for. There's a chapter about real property, personal property. I talked to someone just yesterday whose father-in-law died and left a lot of real property. One lot had been purchased over a number of years, and every different piece of a 17-acre site had a different deed, and different people owned them, and it took over 2 years to get it all straightened out.
Exactly.
But nobody knew that when the man died. It's important to understand the laws of your state. For example, in Virginia, the children, if you die without a will, your children get 2/3 of what you leave, and your surviving spouse gets 1/3. I know of a case where an adult son of a first marriage showed up after the death of a friend's husband and said, "Where's my 1/3? She was astounded. She didn't know about the adult son, number one. And number two, she was astounded that this lawyer would be calling and asking for 1/3 of her husband's estate. I've heard of people that they were ashamed of the fact that they had a mentally challenged child in a first marriage, and that child is tucked away in an institution somewhere, and they die, and the next thing that happens is the wife gets a bill for the monthly care of this child she didn't even know existed.
That's where some of the conversations come in.
Exactly.
Oh, by all means.
To know that kind of information is.
And it's crucial. But weird things happen in families, and Kathleen's absolutely right. You need to have these kinds of conversations, especially if you have a second family. They're very important to have.
Very interesting.
It's an interesting subject to get into, and what we try to do is give you a little bit of a leg up. We're trying to remember things for you. That's why we put them in the book, so that you will say where the key, what the keys are, how many people that live here at Green Spring have marked the key to their storage locker. This
Right.
locker can be found in such and such a place.
In that
Locker
building,
number-
and that, yeah, right.
And what's in the locker is the family history in the locker, is the family Bible you got from Grandma in the locker. What's valuable? I had a friend who owned an antique store, and she had a tiny little thing that was extremely valuable, and she was quite confident that her sons would sell it for nothing. And I was telling Kathleen just the other day, what were they we were talking about? I called them Hubbles, I think.
Hummels.
Hummels.
Hummel statues.
Oh, yeah.
Kathleen corrected me. And I didn't know what a Hummel was, but apparently they're little German figurines that are quite valuable, that sell for hundreds of dollars a piece. And I was told only last weekend by a friend near our country home that a mutual friend had a collection of several thousand Hummels, and one of the kids just put them on eBay and sold them for about $20,000, thinking they were getting a great deal. Turned out they were worth at least $100,000.
Wow.
So if you don't,
Yeah, you need to have them appraised at least.
Exactly.
or at least tell somebody that's an original Van Gogh or what.
Right, right.
Because what's valuable to us may not be valuable. You know, the $30,000 Chippendale sofa would not be as valuable to my son as the leather couch he can lie on.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that's been very obvious here, that we've all found out that the sterling silver with, all the ornateness, our kids don't want that. It's not their style. They'd have to find some place to store it, and they're not going to use it. It requires too much care to use it, in many ways, in their lifestyle. They're not entertaining in that manner or whatever, so it becomes a burden to them rather than, an asset, and they should consider it an asset, and probably mom and dad should sell it rather than let the kids sell it.
Exactly. When we moved into Green Spring, we gave away a whole china cabinet full of crystal.
Sure.
Kids didn't want it.
Yeah, they don't want those. Look, they can't put them in the dishwasher, and they're on the go. They have 2 or 3 jobs, and they don't have time for the care it takes for these things. Maybe they'll live to regret it. Who knows? Or maybe a grandchild might say, "But I would like to have had grandma's whatever," But yeah, it's something I discovered here, that so many residents have said, yeah, I had all this crystal or this good china, and my kids don't want it.
Exactly. And we don't know what things are worth. For example, I will reveal my wife's age, but before we were married, I bought her a 14-karat gold charm bracelet. But back then, gold was selling for $40 an ounce. And my first Christmas gift to her, I was in the Navy, so I gave her the charm bracelet and a tiny little gold anchor. Over the years, we added gold charms to that charm bracelet, most of them 14 karat gold. I don't think that anybody in the family, other than the two of us, has any idea how much that charm bracelet is worth. Because we paid very little for it.
But I have a
But it's worth a lot of money today.
You can bring it down to the Innova Gold people that come here for Kimberly, and they'll appraise it and give you an affidavit telling you what it's worth. Because I actually had something done like that, some diamonds, and because I didn't know what I didn't know what the value was. You know?
And gold watches, silver watches.
Yeah.
I have. My father had some. My father-in-law had some.
Even if they're not working, the gold is worth something.
Exactly. we have.
Yeah.
It's these kinds of things that you need to point out to your children, and it's not a burden. It's an act of love, and how you can do it. You don't have to fill out the blanks in the book. You can, in the medical section, what we did, we collected all our appointment cards with all of our different doctors, and we just scotch taped them to a piece of 8.5 by 11 paper and put it on a copy machine, push the button, and bingo. They're all of our doctors. On the next page, what are we treated for? Then copy the card you carry around in your wallet with all of your prescription drugs. And in 5 minutes, you've completed the medical section. If you really want to do it upright, you can go down to the medical center here and fill out the medical history stuff and put that in the folder. You don't have to, but you can.
You know, in this regard about medicine, just this past week, we have about a minute left, but I wanted to say, I had just recently gotten new dosages or new medications from a heart doctor. So I noticed on the bottle, it didn't say what it was for. Now, I know what it's for, okay? But somebody else isn't going to know what those are for.
Share that information.
So I took a pen and I wrote on the label, for AFib, kind of thing. But that I noticed, it might even be on the box of a prescription, but on the bottle, it's, and that's what you're messing with. So anyway, well, we're very close to quitting time here.
I will leave the people with one thought. And that thought is, at your funeral, you're going to be the star of the show. But you will not, and better not have, a speaking role.
And with that, we will say thank you very much to Don Young and to Kathleen Taylor. Yeah, Kathleen Taylor. Suddenly that last name, I thought Kathleen Taylor. I know several Kathleens. Thank you both for being here. I hope that you've gotten some information that you didn't have before, our audience, and want you to stay tuned for the Eye on Green Spring. Let's see what they're up to today.